me introduce your host, Fino and Sasha, the legit king.
It's the start of the show, time to walk through the smoke. When I enter the ring, I jump over the ropes. I feel like Mysterio, I ain't no joke. Titles, I held them both, call me Chris Jericho. Time to cash in my money in the bank. Just like Sheamus when he beat Roman Reigns. Meet me in the cage, like Undertaker when he met Kane. I don't play games, I'm the Triple H. The crowd screaming, you rock like my name's Dwayne. The crowd screaming, you suck like your Kurt Angle. In the ring, I'm the boss just like Sasha Banks. So you'll get whipped like the intro from Sable. King of my stable, don't matter the label. Smackdown or Raw, you get put through a table. Pushed off a ladder or choked with a cable. Throw me a chair, I'ma give him a facial. It's the start of the show, time to walk through the smoke. When I enter the ring, I jump over the ropes.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the wrestling podcast known as Ring Champs. I am your host, it's your boy, Just Fino, and I'm here with my co-host, the one and only Sasha, the legit king. Sasha, say what's up to the people, please.
What's up, people? How you doing?
I am doing great. I hope you're doing well, Sasha. It's been a good day, I gotta say. I'm feeling refreshed. It was a rough week from work, from wrestling, from everything. It just feels good to finally just get back up to speed and just feel good again.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling refreshed. Since we're recording, that's what we need. You to be refreshed, tension-free, all that good stuff.
I mean, it's hard not to be, you know. This is Saturday night. We're hours away from Forbidden Door. Shout out to AEW New Japan. I'm going to be watching that pay-per-view live. I already purchased it. Another purchase I made at AEW. They got a lot of money from me today. Okay. I also pre-ordered AEW Fight Forever.
I should have got money for you for betting that you would order that. Damn it.
Yeah, I pre-ordered that. I pre-ordered Forbidden Door. Like they got a lot of money from me today. It's like $120 they got from me. They better love me.
Where is Forbidden Door? Like, where is it happening?
It is in Toronto, Canada.
Okay. Is it Sunday? You guys can tell I don't watch it.
Yes. Okay, so they do their pay-per-views on Sundays. It's Sunday nights now. I think they used to do it on Saturdays too, but they moved it down to Sundays, especially now with Collision on Saturday.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, they got it's very interesting. It's gonna be a really great wrestling show. You know, no storyline driven, nothing like that, but just great wrestling. If you care about wrestling, I feel like this is a show that you need to watch.
The only other thing I knew about this was it supposed to be Punk and Kenta, and now it's not Punk and Kenta anymore? Was that?
Yeah, it's some backstage nonsense with Punk as normal. I don't know if it was Punk doesn't want to wrestle him or Kenta does. I don't know what it is, but either way, it's not happening. And honestly, I could care less. It's not a match I wanted to see. Not gonna lie to you. But looks like I have in the background Collision on, and I'll get to more on Collision in a sec. But it looks like we got some new members of the Bullet Club.
Oh man,
Wait,
674. How many members we got?
Yeah, it looks like Bullet Club Gold finally has officially added the Gun Brothers. So I don't know what they're called. Billy Gunn's kids. Gun Club, that's what they call it.
So we just adding people.
Yeah, they just officially joined. They just did the Bullet Club thing. So
I feel like in an alternate universe, the NWO just joined the Bullet Club too. So everybody's just joining up.
All right, don't be shitting on the Bullet Club. They do their thing. I ain't gonna lie, it's not as good as it used to be when Kenny and all of them were there. AJ, Balor, all of them, but it's still good. You got to give them major props. They're definitely one of the best factions to ever be assembled. That is a fact.
Okay.
It's true. But
I'm taking your word for it.
We'll talk about
the only thing I know about Bullet Club is it has like 927 members, and then Finn Balor started. That's all I know. That is it.
Okay, I give you that. That's true. That is true. But we do got a lot to talk about today. So I think today is going to be a very special episode. It's a different episode than we've probably ever done. I mean, I don't know how to feel about it. It's interesting. I think it's a very interesting topic. It's about one of my favorite professional wrestlers ever.
Mine too. He's one of my 1A. Depends on it's not the day, but it's like my 1A, and Jeff Hardy's my 1B. So I don't know.
Okay, see, he's up there with me. He's definitely in my top 3 favorites. So it's going to be very interesting to talk about him. And I'm not going to say his name yet till we start the actual topic, but it's definitely going to be a very, very interesting and a topic that we're definitely going to be diving into. And it's going to be a series that we're going to do for several episodes, not in a row or anything, but once every few episodes we'll do this type of series, and we'll get into more details into that. But right before we do that, Sasha, I just have to let you know AEW did a good job with Collision. Their first 2 shows, I watched them both live. I have to tell you that it's a different feel. I like the announcers on their show. My boy Guinness, as I call him, but Nigel McGuinness is up there. I forgot the other guy's name. He does New Japan. Kevin Kelly is up there. I'm not sure how familiar you are with him, but he used
yes.
You remember he was he was one of the backstage people for WWE. The Rock used to make fun of him all the time.
I was gonna say, who could forget?
So it's a nice parallel to Dynamite's broadcast team. It just feels better. They talk about actual legit stuff in the ring, and they don't overreact to things. It's just really, really entertaining to watch. And then the matches are really good. They're actually, it feels like they're being more focused on the actual matches. The first night we had Buddy versus Andrade. Hell of a match. Tonight we had Swerve Strickland versus Tanahashi. Great match. So I'm liking the focus on more just of the wrestling with what they're doing in Collision. It's completely different from Dynamite.
That's what they said they wanted it to be, right? Like they wanted it to be completely just a different attitude, a different feel. Dynamite.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I would definitely say that's probably the angle they would go. I'm not a whole fan of them copying the Nitro look or whatever, but
okay.
Other than that, it is what it is. It feels good to watch wrestling on Saturday. I forgot that there was actually wrestling on today. I got home and I was just searching channels and I was like, oh shoot, AEW's on. Let me watch this. I'm not used to it yet, unless it's a PLE from WWE. But other than that, I like the vibes from it. So that's definitely a good thing to have. Pretty much every day there's something on that's from the wrestling world. So I gotta give major props to AEW. We're a show that's gonna be giving props out a lot. Gotta give major props to AEW for doing that. And one more thing, Sasha, do you know what today is, by the way?
Today is Saturday.
Today is Saturday, but what is today?
June 24th.
And June 24th, but what is today? Do you not know what today really is?
I mean, it's not your birthday. It's not my birthday.
It's a day that's bigger than all of that. Today, another record has been broken.
It's today.
Today.
Is this 2 years? Is that what it is?
No.
Oh, okay. Damn, I thought I had it.
It's even more special than that.
Damn,
Today, my tribal chief.
Oh no.
Has held the WWE Universal Championship for 1,028 days, which is a milestone because he has now broke Pedro Morales' 1,027-day reign as WWE champion.
Who else knew that besides you? Are you clapping? Oh my goodness.
Today needs to be a holiday.
It's Saturday.
It needs to be a holiday. My tribal chief has broken another record. He is the fourth longest world championship reign in WWE history.
Congratulations.
He only has
I'm glad this wasn't like a gun.
And San Martino left.
I'm glad this wasn't like a gun to the head situation. I'd have been out of here.
What have you been paying attention to?
I don't know. Apparently.
It's a professional wrestling podcast, which means this is a Roman Reigns podcast.
My bad, Chief. I'll make sure that I get it together, Cap.
You're slacking here. You're slacking. I can't believe you. I just cannot.
I'll take my demerit with dignity. I get it.
It's just a shame. And I was just feeling refreshed. You know, I woke up this morning, went to work, got home, and I felt good all day because I knew today was just such a special day.
Well, I was thinking, like, what day could this be for Roman Reigns if we literally just did the 1,000? But I mean, no, that's a good call. Pedro Morales, that's huge because you hear that record sparingly used on TV, so that's pretty huge, and especially in this day and age. But I mean, congratulations to your tribal chief.
Excuse me, he is your tribal chief too.
I mean, you know, I guess.
What, you think because there's a civil war that we can just, you know, like we have to just forget about evereverything he's done?
I think I'm gonna wait till the dust settles. I'm gonna wait till the dust settles to pledge my allegiance. All right?
No, you're gonna do that tonight because I have a question for you.
I'm good. What?
We are among a civil war in the bloodline. Okay? You have to now choose your side. You choosing the Iron Man side, the Captain America side. You know, that's basically what it is. The last Civil War we had was a great movie with Captain America's team versus Iron Man's team, okay? Now we're along another great Civil War. I need you to choose a side.
Can we wait till the next episode for this? I need some time, I think.
I know, what?
I do.
Why?
Because I need some time. You know me, I'm very careful what I think, and I don't make rash decisions like that. That's your side of the podcast. Remember, I am the calm to your storm, so I need a little time. I need to weigh it out. Don't trouble me. Don't rush me, all right?
Oh, man. Only if you were just follow the tribal chief like I do.
I mean, look at the people who follow him. They kicked him in the face. You only got one left. Well, two if you can't Paul Heyman.
That shouldn't have happened. Okay.
Look, if he wasn't an emotional manipulator, none of this would have happened. None of this would have happened. You can't gaslight people and do all that those other buzzwords that everybody uses in society and just get away with it. It just doesn't happen.
He is not a manipulator, okay? He is not. Not my fault, okay, that they felt that way. But that is not what he was doing at all. He was protecting his family.
Okie dokie.
That's all I'm saying. But it's okay. You know what? Maybe one day I will forgive Jey Uso for what he did. I will. Maybe. We'll see. You know, I always want to know, like, what if that never happened? Like, how would that, you know, just change the course of history? Because that changed a lot. It really did change the future of professional wrestling. That one kick changed everything. And I know we're not going to see it now, but many, many years from today, we will see that, damn, that kick just changed the course of everybody's future. And that brings me to today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, that Sasha is going to gladly describe to you all, because it's that type of scenario that we're going to use for today's topic. Sasha, please let the people know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so as always, we're always trying to, bring you the best content we have, and we're going to try something a little new today. Like Fino said, we're not going to do this every episode, but we're going to start a segment called What If, where we ask questions. What if certain things didn't or did happen in the world of professional wrestling, and how it would impact the product as we know today. So, for our inaugural What If episode, as Fino was alluding to earlier, one of his maybe top 3 and probably my favorite wrestler of all time, we wanted to talk about what would happen if we had not lost Eddie Guerrero in 2005. So let's go back. Let us talk about what happened. We're going to go back all the way to November 11th, 2005. Hopefully some of our audience was still alive, then, but if you weren't, let's tell you how the world was at the time. November 11th, 2005. All right, the number 1 song in America was Gold Digger by Kanye West before he was Ye.
She ain't nothing but a gold digger. Oh, man.
Yep. Kanye West featuring Jamie Foxx.
That was saying Kanye, by the way, people. I know a lot of you may not know that Kanye, but that's when they refer to old Kanye, that's old Kanye, right?
Yes, this is pre 808s and Heartbreaks Kanye. This was
graduation Kanye.
Yeah, this was Kanye at his, I wouldn't say his peak, because he had a lot more good albums after that, but this was definitely when the Kanye swell was just really starting. And then the number 1 movie in America was Chicken Little, which I've never seen, but
I have. I've seen that movie.
Yeah, my husband has a funny story about that, our son. But anyway, so on November 11th, 2005 was a Friday, and on that day, Friday Night SmackDown aired. It's not SmackDown Live. It was Friday Night. Friday Night SmackDown. They were still taping it back then. So on that episode, it was a couple weeks before the 2005 Survivor Series, and like I said, if you're sort of new and you don't really know too much about Survivor Series, they just stopped doing it a couple years ago, but they have the traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series matches. I believe this time it was Raw versus SmackDown. It was like that for a couple of years, but back in 2005, it was Raw versus SmackDown. Were you gonna say something?
No, you're good. Sorry.
All right. So they had a handful of qualifying matches. The first qualifying match was Rey Mysterio, who defeated Randy Orton to qualify for the Survivor Series team for SmackDown. Lashley qualified by beating Orlando Jordan, and John Bradshaw Layfield defeated Chris Benoit. And the final Survivor Series qualifying match of that evening was Mr. Kennedy losing by disqualification to Eddie Guerrero in 4 minutes. Now, Eddie had just come off of a incredible heel turn, fighting for custody of Dominic Mysterio. Again, if you were not watching wrestling back then and you hear things on the internet about Eddie being Dominic's dad, go back and watch that feud. It was pretty ridiculous if you think about it, but you really can't gloss over the heel work that Eddie did in that feud. So he was just coming off of that. He had been teaming with Batista. That was kind of like the crux of him coming back to being a baby face. Just kind of getting back to that Latino heat we all know and love. So he defeated Mr. Kennedy by disqualification, using one of his wonderful, well-known cheating tactics with a chair. So that was November 11th. Now, 2 days later, and as most of you know, we lost Eddie in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And before we go into the what if, Pino, do you remember when you heard that Eddie had passed?
I
remember
did. I mean, I do. I'm sorry. I do. That was so. Let's see. That was 2005. You said so.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. 2005. I was 14. So I was definitely a huge fan. Definitely by then. Eddie was. I was. Oh man, it's hard to even talk about it. Eddie, he was one of my favorites. So when I heard it, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. It was more like it reminds me of just how I felt like when Kobe died. It was like that type of shock where I was like, nah, that they joking. Like I didn't believe it. Took a while to actually believe it until I watched that SmackDown. When I watched that SmackDown, then it really, really hit me. I teared up like a baby, man. I cried so much. That one hurt.
Yeah, I remember that day. I remember it was weird. I remember everything about that day, like waking up and then seeing what happened and just being like, no, that's not right. Like, I remember like Googling on the internet and it just broke. So it's not like now where it's like if something happens, you can go to Twitter or anything. I mean, not saying that Twitter wasn't around, but it wasn't. Maybe it was. I don't know.
No,
But
Twitter wasn't even around then.
oh yeah, 2005. Yeah, it wasn't like now you just go and like Twitter has it immediately. It was kind of like you had to wait to kind of see like what news outlets would pick it up. And of course, like back then, it's like a wrestler death kind of wasn't, unless it was under some like salacious, circumstances. But nah, Googled Eddie and it said Eddie Guerrero was dead at 38, and I just remember like feeling like I was underwater the rest of the day. Like it just didn't seem right.
It just didn't feel real at all, man. It just like I was like, I just watched them. Nah, that's a mistake, or But the thing is, like where I was, they were actually picking that story up. So it was like, because it's like you said, unless it was something malicious, but Eddie was such a big name in wrestling, and in that time, wrestling was still, a big thing. It's way bigger, in the media back then than it is now. Now pretty much it's, and as when you're a big name like Eddie was for that company, it was starting to hit waves and it hit everywhere. And I guess even then, even with all that, it didn't hit me really, like I said, until that SmackDown.
Yeah, I remember like watching Raw the next day and hearing like "Hurt" by Johnny Cash, and even now it's like hearing that song. It's like, I can't really sit through the whole thing all the time. It's not easy. So, but like I said, on today's episode, like I said, we're reminiscing about what happened that day, but we're gonna just talk about what would happen if we hadn't lost Eddie. If Eddie had won his match and went on to Survivor Series, and if Eddie was still with us today, like what would the wrestling world look like? Obviously, we wish this was true because we wish this was real life, but looking at this and kind of, thinking about what if, it's kind of like another way for us to celebrate him, because even though he's been gone for 18 years, I believe it's 18 years, he's still such a integral part of the business that we know and love. Like a lot of wrestlers that you see, if you walk into a locker room and poll them, like how many of them would say that Eddie Guerrero was an influence on them? Like who wouldn't say, I guess would be the better question. So on today's show, we're going to talk about what would happen if November 13th had come and gone and Eddie was still with us. So that's where we're going to start. You want to go ahead?
Well, let's start with one thing. So let's acknowledge, what he did for the business. This is a man that was a former WWE champion, 2-time European champion, a United States champion, 2-time Intercontinental champion, 4-time tag team champion. He's won. It wasn't an official Royal Rumble, but he won a SmackDown Royal Rumble. It was only like 15 men.
Yeah.
He was the 11th Triple Crown champion. He was the sixth Grand Slam champion. I mean, that right there is just Hall of Fame, just automatically. Obviously, he made it to the Hall of Fame 2006, the year after he passed away. This is not even including all the other titles that he's won in other promotions prior to WWE. You know, he's had, WCW runs, Cruiserweight champion, United States champion several times. He's been, if you go to Wrestling Observer News, he was Feud of the Year several times, Tag Team of the Year several times. Most charismatic person, voted in wrestling. Voted during 2004, 2005 by the viewers and fans of the Wrestling Observer. So, this is a man who is obviously decorated. I think that what made Eddie so special, and I think that's where, it all begins, is just how I felt like he related to the crowd so well. Like they just love seeing him. His interactions with the fans, I think, it's up there with the best ever. I always go back to that championship when he won the championship against Brock Lesnar. The crowd reaction to that,
and jumping into
the crowd, and just the way that I haven't seen that in a long time.
I would say maybe Daniel Bryan.
Daniel Bryan was like it. You have to be at a certain level with the fans to get that. Obviously we know what Daniel Bryan was to the fans with the whole Yes movement. But Eddie had that type of thing with the fans too. You didn't even have to be there to just feel everything he had, and he put his heart and soul into everything he did. He wasn't there for the money. He wasn't there for the gold. He was just there to entertain. And I think that's why everyone loved Eddie. Obviously he was a fantastic wrestler. Obviously he had a great character, but it was just that love that he had for the sport just made him also special.
Yeah, and you have to look at like how masterfully, I guess, to kind of piggyback off what you said about him in the crowd, how masterful he was at working in the crowd. Because think about it, he took his character essentially could have been in the wrong hands. It could have been viewed as, stereotype, negative stereotype against, people of Hispanic culture, but he took that and he made it into something that was unique, something that made him lovable, something that worked within the confines of a wrestling, character. He a genius. Like I said, if that was in the wrong hands, that could have went left. But for him to take that and to steer it in a more positive direction, especially considering how much the Hispanic demographic loved Eddie Guerrero. Like, man, but I couldn't imagine. We talk about representation on this show. It's like, think about, the love that he had in that community. And for him to take something that could have very well been seen as disparaging to that community and make it into what he did, like, that's just the sign of somebody who not only did their craft well, but damn, he mastered it. Like, that's insane for him to do something like that. So I always look at him like that. You don't ever hear anybody say like, well, he was this, he was that. It was like, no, Eddie Guerrero was their guy. Like, I've seen a meme a couple years ago. It's like, it said two people from the Hispanic community that you can't say anything bad about, otherwise you're gonna have to fight. And he was one of the people in the picture. So it's like, people will throw down for Eddie Guerrero. So I just wanted to put that in there.
No, I think you said that perfectly. I think, what really proves the connection with Eddie, it goes back to prior to him winning the championship against Brock. he had a promo. This was leading to No Way Out. It was to me, it's his best promo by far, and it's one of the greatest promos of all time. It was the addiction promo that he did with Brock Lesnar, and he talked about how he lost his job, he lost his wife, his kids, he lost himself, he lost his spirit. He disgraced his race, family, so on and so on. But he had to earn his way back, and he had to earn that respect of his kids, earn the respect of the life that he got, and he pretty much he was addicted, using that. Obviously, we know the addiction of of his past and why he went down to the lowest of lows, but it was that addiction of getting back, and it was just such a strong promo of just the way he turned it into I'm just addicted to just being, being able to be there for his family, be there for his wife, be there for the fans. It was a different type of high is basically how he explained it. And I think that promo just really signified that connection and why everyone loved him, because we knew he wasn't there for the goal. He wasn't there for the money. He was just there to just be there and be an entertainer for everybody.
As well as his family legacy too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I could talk about Eddie all day. I am not gonna lie, but to stay to the topic of what if Eddie didn't die, I'm gonna start with something that, for me, I think would not only show how great Eddie was, but I think it would show what he could have done to other people, other wrestlers in the business. Sorry, my mic off. So for one, we mentioned they were leading into Survivor Series, I believe he said, right?
Yep.
So I believe he had just finished. Did he not just finish a feud with Batista?
I think they had been,
or they were feuding.
Tag team. Yeah, they were feuding, and then they were tag team partners. Is that what it was?
Right, and then Batista, I think they were feuding at that time. I don't remember the exact thing. The timeline is a little murky for me right now, but I just think the Eddie that we know. So one thing we know is that he didn't want to be champion. It was something that it brought a lot of stress to his life, being the champion. In fact, it's well known that they were happy that he was happy that they gave the title to JBL. JBL beat him for the title because of just that stress. It was too much for him, being the number one guy. But I think that one thing that he did love was putting people over. He definitely loved that. We don't get the JBL character. JBL is not a Hall of Famer without a guy like Eddie Guerrero who put him to the top, and that's how we got, the JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield that we got. He's not the wrestling god if he doesn't have that feud with Eddie Guerrero. And they had a brutal match, so violent match that really put over how great JBL got to be, and I think that would have continued. I think that 2005 we're seeing the beginnings of guys like Edge start to build up. A few years later, we're getting guys like CM Punk who are building up in the WWE. Imagine Eddie in a feud with CM Punk.
I was actually going to say that. That was one of my points, just to think about some of the matchups that he would have had, because CM Punk debuted, I believe, a couple years. I think about 2009. I think so. About 4 years after Eddie would have passed. In 4 years, Eddie would have been 42. Was it 2009 or 2006?
I think that CM Punk.
Yeah, CM Punk.
I think it was before 2009.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was my other person I was thinking of, his other feud, but I'll get to that one in a second. But yeah, just to think, like, CM Punk, he debuted not that long after Eddie passed. So, like you said, to think he could have had a feud with CM Punk, and you're talking about him putting guys over, think about what that would have been like. And they had already wrestled each other on the indies. Eddie had wrestled Punk when he had been let go from WWE, and he was working the indies before he came back. So they already were familiar with each other. And, CM Punk has spoke nothing but great things about Eddie Guerrero. And that would have been amazing. And to my point, I was saying that in 2009, like you said, somebody like a Daniel Bryan, that would have been 4 years. Eddie would have been 42 years old if he had feuded with Daniel Bryan when he came into the company. And think about that for a second. Like, Eddie was 38 when he died. How young that is. And especially, like, in the world of wrestling, when you think about, when somebody's hitting their prime. Like, listen to this for a second. AJ Styles debuted in WWE when he was 39 years old. Just when he walked in, he debuted at the Rumble in 2016. It's 39. Think about what he's been able to do in that time. And he was a year older than Eddie was when Eddie passed. When HBK and Undertaker had their fantastic, just like probably greatest WrestleMania match of all time at WrestleMania 25. Do you know how old they were?
I believe Taker was like 42, and I think Shawn was 44.
Shawn was 44. Undertaker was 45.
45. Okay. He's older than Shawn. Okay, gotcha.
Edge right now is 49.
That's
Kofi
crazy.
Kofi Kingston right now is 41. Randy Orton, I think he's like 42 or like. Think about these men in their prime, and Eddie was 38. And think about all those things that you talked about he had done, and his life was cut short at 38. So think about what more he could have done, in that short of time. We talked about CM Punk, we talked about Daniel Bryan. In 2000, what happened in 2005? We talked about this in the last episode when we talked about, that blurring lines, between backstage and what happens in the ring. And what was the one wrestler that we talked about that benefited from something like that happening? When we talk about like that famous love triangle, who benefited the most from it?
Oh yeah, it was Edge.
Think about a rated R Edge versus Eddie Guerrero.
Well, speaking about that, I mean, I'm not using this to hurt your boy Jeff, but the feud he had with CM Punk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine Eddie in that place.
Yeah, because he could say
not only can he talk back, he's a way better promo than Jeff ever would be, but Eddie like lived it more than I would say Jeff did at that time.
But think about that. Okay, I didn't think about that, but I agree. I love that. But think about if Eddie had feuded with Jeff, how he could. It's different from when Punk feuded with Jeff because Punk was obviously talking down to Jeff. Think about how Eddie could have gotten Jeff's head because he knows what that's like. Like he can tap into thoughts that only somebody with those kind of issues can talk about.
Right.
And speak to him on a level that unless they had been there, they wouldn't be able to get to Jeff like that. Just think about those. That's amazing. I didn't even think about that. But
yeah, like a heel Eddie trying to get a face Jeff to go back into his addictions because he's going to need to be addicted to beat him. Oh man. Woo!
Yeah, or even just maybe not getting him back into addiction, but just again, Punk was talking down to him, but Eddie could be talking down to him in his own way.
Like
you're getting deep. He knows how the mind of an addict is or was. He can hit those points that somebody else can hit. Because it's easy to say, "Oh, look at you," because you've never done it. But imagine, look at you because I've been there, and look where I am. I beat it, and you're still. Think about that, like how insane that would be. And then, think about we could have had more Eddie and Undertaker. Think about when Undertaker, all those years he was in the ministry and all that other stuff, he really hit his prime. And he really started having those amazing matches when he was on SmackDown.
Yep, the 2000. It was like the 2006 to 2009 run or 2008 run, or something like that on SmackDown.
I'm just saying. Think
Where
about
all they did was Teddy Long putting people in matches with The Undertaker.
Right. So think about it. Prime Eddie, prime Undertaker at that time.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna tell you another match that we would have gotten. That in fact, not only was it heavily discussed, it more than likely would have happened, and Vince was definitely behind the idea. So, 2006, not the Royal Rumble, 2006 WrestleMania would have been a match between the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, and Eddie Guerrero. Holy shit.
Never touched, ever. If you could believe that, never.
You know how big of a match that would have been? A great match. Like, I'm thinking Shawn Michaels Angle vibes, Eddie Angle vibes. Like, oh my god.
And to think like how the roster was stacked, because unfortunately we never got HBK and Eddie, but then we got that banger that was HBK and Angle. But I mean, you're right. Eddie and HBK, unreal. Like, ugh.
And just leading up to that, I think we got to go. What else would have changed? I mean, obviously, with the unfortunate passing, one thing that happened, I think we have to talk about is Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, I mean,
Rey
Mysterio first brought this topic up. You did bring that up, so
look. I love Rey Mysterio. Don't get me wrong, okay? And this is not to disrespect Rey Mysterio, because I don't mean any disrespect with this. But you mentioned, I proposed a question back to you because I think you brought up the Eddie Guerrero what if scenario.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what I was thinking, but I just said this out loud, and it kind of like hit me for a second. I think it caused you to pause. But
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I get it. But would Rey Mysterio be a Hall of Famer without Eddie dying?
I think he would be. Now, I don't know. Okay, so again, this is like no disrespect to Rey, because I think he would have been in the Hall of Fame regardless. Because even if, like I said, we're doing the what if, even if he didn't pass, I mean, you have to think about, again, how many people Rey has inspired in his career and what he managed to do. Like, he's not a big man at all.
You're right.
He wears a mask. There are so many reasons why he shouldn't have succeeded the way that he did, but he did. But
right, he did. But a large amount of his success happened after.
I would say
a large part of, that was 2005. That was 18 years of his success. Now, I'm not saying he wouldn't have been successful eventually.
Right, I get what you're saying. I mean, the only thing I would have caught to is I can't say for certain he would have won the world title when he did.
But you think eventually he would have?
I mean, it's hard not to, I don't know. Because I guess at that time, the reason why I could kind of see why you asked that question is because he had been primarily, he'd been getting in there with some of the heavyweights, but kind of before then, he was known as a cruiserweight, and I mean, it obviously was at some point, like he was a little different, like he was kind of set apart a little bit from the cruiserweights, but I can't say that I ever really thought about him being world heavyweight champion. I can't say, I don't think it would have happened. I just never thought about it. And then with Eddie passing, which is, again, it made me pause, but I could see why you would pose that question. I think he would have been in the Hall of Fame, but I don't know if I don't know if I would have considered him winning the world title.
All right, well then let me change the question then, because I think I agree he probably would make the Hall of Fame, but would he have been as successful in his career if that?
I think he would have. I think Eddie passing and what happened afterwards. Yeah, you can make the argument that was definitely fueled by what had happened, but I think he's Rey Mysterio. I think that he didn't have the connection that Eddie did, but he had his own special connection. And the things he was able to do, like I said, I don't think he would have been world champion, but I still think he would have been he had enough in his career. Because if you think about it, okay, he won the world heavyweight title. He didn't have the best reign after that. Like, it wasn't booked as strongly. He wasn't going in there and just beating everybody after, No, it was that fairy tale story going into there, and then they kind of let it.
I think he won. He had it for what, 2 months, maybe? I think, or it wasn't even long.
It wasn't that long, But I say I would credit that run to Eddie, but I would not base the rest of his career off of it. Like, I don't think that's fair to say.
Okay.
If it was just the title run, yes. But the rest of it, I think he got that on his own. I think, like I said, every reason why Rey Mysterio works is the same reason why people argue it shouldn't have worked. He's small. He's not the best promo guy. They're talking about wrestling. It's all about your face. You don't get to see his face. All those reasons it shouldn't have worked, but it did. And I don't think that isolated incident of Eddie passing is the reason why it all of a sudden worked. He was popular before, but I think that title run, definitely you could credit that to Eddie. Like, that was because of Eddie. But everything else, I don't think so.
I get that. I definitely get that. I'm gonna switch it a little bit. One thing that I think Eddie would have gotten credit for, that if he was still alive. So we mentioned it before. We mentioned Daniel Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how Daniel Bryan, a lot of people credit him for the way that WWE kind of changed its stance on that type of wrestler, that the small guy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially main eventing WrestleMania. First off, you beat Triple H in the opening match, hell of a match. Then you go into the main event and the second match of his night, and then win the title at WrestleMania 30. A lot of people credit Daniel Bryan for that run, or CM Punk, because it was because CM Punk leaving, whichever way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if Eddie was still alive, I think that Eddie would have been more of that reason. He would have been, especially in main event matches consistently, he would have been easily one of the top guys of the WWE, top faces or heels, whichever way they wanted to use him.
Yeah.
He would have excelled in any role he was in. And, he was already facing the likes of Batista. He was facing, I believe he faced Cena a little bit. He was already facing these top names, and there was so many top names already at that time. Lashley was there, Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Randy Orton. You never know, maybe even a Shelton Benjamin or something could have been, been used more if Eddie was around to help build that, because Eddie would have been, the way I feel Eddie would have loved to work with the bottom of the card to help build everyone up.
Yep.
Just so many names that we can just blast off on that. Damn, if Eddie had a chance to be in the ring with them, imagine what Eddie could do for their career. Let's talk about Chavo. I'm sorry. Chavo, as good as he is, we remember him. Why? Because of what he was with Los Guerreros and Eddie Guerrero. Tag Team of the Year 2005. They had a great run as tag team champions. That was because of Eddie.
Yeah, I love Los Guerrero, so
I do
those are
too.
my
I mean,
guys.
lie, cheat, and steal. They coming out in the low rider. Like I loved it all. I
And the
mean,
little
even
vignettes, I love those too.
loved them all. Like, and just imagine like if Eddie was around. I think more the smaller style, maybe even more cruiserweights would come. Just imagine this. Eddie's still around, and we get the Vince is like, okay, you know what? These cruiserweights seem to be bringing a lot to the business. Imagine a young Ricochet in WWE a lot earlier in his career than what he is. You know, he joined what 2018, maybe
Mm-hmm.
17, something around there, and he already had like years in the game already. Imagine if Ricochet was younger, and because Vince saw Eddie, he was like, you know what? Maybe I could bring Ricochet on and turn him into something big.
Yeah.
Or even a Will Ospreay. Maybe he convinces a Will Ospreay young in his career to come over to WWE. Imagine what Will Ospreay could be, or something like that.
And even to your point, so, like we said, Eddie was 38 when he passed. I mean, so think about 9 years from there, at 2005 and then 9 years. That brings us to 2014. Eddie would have been 47. And, that would have been, I would think, all those years he's on the road, he probably would have been winding down or done by then. But 2014, we got the black and gold brand getting off the ground. I mean, I want you to think about somebody like an Eddie Guerrero, like the wealth of knowledge, being his family legacy. What if he had his hands in helping with NXT? Think about how amazing that would have been, like, for a Sasha Banks to have
Oh my
somebody
god!
like an Eddie Guerrero if you wanted that. We don't know. Like I said, this is all what if. We don't know. But think about, like,
a Seth Rollins with that knowledge.
yes.
As
Think
great
about
as Seth
that.
is already, imagine with Eddie's hand in that too. Oh my god!
You think about that. Like, what if he had a hand in helping them? Because we just talked about, like, how masterful he was at working the crowd. Could you imagine, like, having Eddie there? Even thinking about, like, I was kind of thinking about this, we're always talking about the Eddie and Sasha Banks connection. Think about when Shawn Michaels, when he won his first world title, he had, like, Jose Lothario, who trained him in his corner. Think about if Sasha Banks was going for her first. Think about WrestleMania, 32. Charlotte Flair would have had Ric Flair in her corner, that triple threat. Think about if Eddie had been there for Sasha in her corner, helping her train. Like, think about what a moment that would have been like for somebody like her. Outside of just training behind the scenes, having him there, what that would have done. Even if you wanted to go further, Eddie, we lost him 18 years ago, so he would have been 56. Clearly he wouldn't have been in the ring anymore. But think about, if he made an appearance this past year when Dominic and Ray were going at it, like, what that would have been. Because they had that past storyline, where he was claiming to be Dominic's father. Think about the role he would have played in that. You can't trust Eddie too much. So, I don't know if necessarily he would have been, going with Ray on this. Maybe he would have sided with Dominic. You don't know. But man, just think about the kind of hand he would play outside of the ring with these new talents coming in.
That feud, speaking of that feud with Eddie versus Dom, if you had not Eddie versus Ray versus Dom, if you had an Eddie in there who was like they don't show him at all, but like there's someone in his ear, we don't know who it is, and then it turns out to be Eddie the whole time saying, and they just rehash that feud, like, oh,
because that's it. Hey, if you want to believe the story, that's his daddy's son. So, and look at his dad, his quote unquote storyline dad. It all makes sense. It all comes together.
You'll have daddy and mommy. You know what I mean? It's like,
I don't think he'd be like a permanent fixture, but just leading up to that WrestleMania match, if they had just weaved him in, think how like tremendous that would have been, you know. One thing I did want to touch on though, I feel like if Eddie hadn't passed, I think one thing we would not have gotten, because I don't see, due to the circumstances it happening, I don't think we would have gotten one of the biggest heels to ever come out of this, Vicky Guerrero. I don't think, because remember, she started working for WWE after he passed.
Right.
Because remember, he was, she was a stay-at-home mom. So then she started working to take care of their family after he passed. So, I mean, and if you know, during her heyday, Vicky was getting like nuclear heat. Like, all she had to do was say excuse me, and then you could barely hear anything after that.
Excuse me!
Exactly. So that's one thing we wouldn't have got if
Well, you know what?
lived.
Let's jump on that because, this is what if. So I have a question. We mentioned his name before, but we mentioned Edge.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get rated R superstar without a Vicky to help get to that level.
He was rated R before he got with her. That was more of him and Lita, but I agree. Like,
well, that was okay. I'm sorry, I mixed it up. I thought Lita was after Vicky.
No, that was before.
Okay. I thought he left Lita. I thought he left Vicky to go with Lita. Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, then never mind. Well, I would still say this then. She did have a very impactful, a very impactful effect on Edge. Vicky, when it was Vicky and Edge, and I think that definitely helped his career. So if not having, because I don't know what happened to Lita. I don't know if she retired. She just retired. Okay. Mm-hmm. So with her retiring, Edge needed someone to be there with him. And I think Vicky helped, obviously Lita helped establish it, but Vicky kept it going.
Yeah, she kind of cemented it.
Yeah, so with not having a Vicky Guerrero around, I wonder what that would have had on the effect of Edge. Now, could they have filled that in with somebody? Probably. But would they have had the effect that Vicky did? I don't know.
I think this was going to happen either way. I think, like you said, Vicky was very, impactful on Edge's character development. You can't take that away, but I could say he was always going to be rated R, but having Vicky after Lita left definitely did help because, like I said, a lot of his initial gimmick with rated R was because he had Lita. So, like you said, him and Vicky, it's what they needed. They didn't stay together that long, I don't think, but I think, like you said, that was a good little stop for him to kind of counteract losing Lita, because then after that he really didn't. He had La Familia and everything like that, but again, he could still go when he was on his own. But like I said, without Eddie, I just don't see us getting Vicky Guerrero like that. There would have been no reason for it to happen. She wouldn't have needed to work there if he'd still been alive. So that was one thing I feel like we wouldn't have got if he had still been alive, was the heel of Vicky Guerrero. So
okay, so let me ask you this. Maybe, I don't know if you have any already thought out of, but what we spoke of what if things, if he was alive, the positive things, but is there any negatives if he was still alive? And when I say negative, not that it would have been a bad, but speaking of Vicky, we wouldn't have gotten Vicky. Is there other things that you think would not have happened if Eddie had lived?
There's one thing that I wonder.
Oh, go ahead. Let's go. We here to talk, baby. You know what I'm saying?
I want to be very careful when I say this.
We whatever it is, make sure you preface it by saying,
I know.
If we gotta have a little, if I gotta pause it and say and have a speech, a computer speech, say, now this is just we're saying this in
I got it.
respect,
it.
you know, or
I-
something
I-
like that. I will definitely add, like, I'll add it to the show,
no.
people.
I'll say it.
Don't
I
say
don't.
nothing disrespectful now.
No, that's not me. But
That's me. I know.
I want. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I want to preface this by saying that I don't think this was the reason why this happened.
Oh, I know where you're going. I know where you're going, and that's okay. Go ahead and say. I'll let you say it. I'd rather you be it because I don't want to be that one. Go ahead.
No,
I know
like I said, I
exactly
want
where
to
you're
be
going.
right. So
It had to be talked about, Sasha. It had to. We have to.
okay,
Make it.
all right.
Go.
I don't.
You want
I'm
me
not.
to say it?
No, I will say it. I will say it.
Okay.
I don't think Eddie's death is the reason why Chris Benoit did what he did. I think that there are factors and situations which unfortunately caused that to happen. But from seeing things, I remember I watched The Dark Side of the Ring about Chris Benoit. They interviewed Vicky and everything like that. I want to say I think the death of Eddie did nothing to slow down the deterioration of Chris Benoit and his mental health. I think that, again, being respectful of the Benoit family, to Nancy and Daniel, like I said, what would have happened? Who knows? I don't know that. But what I'm saying is to see how deeply this man was affected by the death of his best friend. If something was clearly already wrong, the loss of his best friend did nothing to slow what was already deteriorating with this man mentally. So I'm not saying that if Eddie Guerrero hadn't passed, that Chris Benoit and his family would have been alive. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is to have that happen, to have Chris react such a strong way that he did, I think that definitely was something that broke something inside of Chris Benoit that was already coming undone. But like I said, I don't think that was the reason. And I wonder, had Eddie been alive, maybe Chris would have been able to confide in him. We don't know. Maybe not. We don't know all of that. But I just think that to see how he reacted to his death, to know how close they were, I felt like Eddie in his own way was kind of an anchor for Chris. Once that anchor was gone, it was kind of he was lost. But like I said, there was a lot more factors in this that you can point to that led to everything. But I just wonder, what would have happened if he had lost his best friend. But again, we don't know. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to the Benoit family. I'm not saying that it would have stopped it, but those are the kind of things, like, curiosity-wise, you wonder. Because I remember watching that tribute special, and to see a man like Chris Benoit, whose gimmick was that he is this machine, like, he goes, he's merciless, like, he does not care. To see how this man was so hurt when Eddie died. It was like I'll never forget it. Like, that was the one interview that I watched that whole week where I looked and I'm like, that man is beyond devastated that his friend is gone. And I just, again, we don't know what would have happened, but man, that's all I want to say. You want to say anything else about it? I don't want to be redundant.
No, I get where you're coming from, but I'm in the belief that if Eddie never passed, and especially after watching that Dark Side of the Ring, I especially believe that if he didn't die, that would not have happened. I think that, and I think they said it, I didn't go back and watch it prior to this episode, of us recording. I didn't, obviously that's not something you just want to go watch and, rewatch or whatever. But if I remember, I think that they were basically saying like what really broke him, and I'm talking about Benoit, of course. What really broke him was that, like, it was, I felt like the way it really felt to me, it was like there was nothing in this world more important to that man than Eddie. Like, obviously he loved his kids and family, don't get me wrong, but it was just Eddie was just that thing, like their connection was just so strong. That was his connection to the world in a way. And when you lose that connection, yes, he kept going, but it was not in the right direction that he was going, obviously.
Right. And that's why I said I felt like something was already there. Like something.
I don't think. I mean, it's like I can't speak on this because I've obviously never, I've never been in a situation where like, and I really mean this in the respectful. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. So if I say anything incorrectly, I do apologize to anyone. I've never been in a state of that low. So I don't know what it feels like. I'm only talking from an outside perspective. When you feel so low that you don't have anything, and the one thing that keeps you sane in this world, I think, I think parents would feel this. You would feel this. Your kids is like your number one thing in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, just imagine, and God forbid, and I hate to go this direction, but just God forbid you didn't have that lifeline anymore. You would be at the lowest of your lows, right? I think that's how Benoit felt. And without having that thing that he loved the most, because it just felt to me Eddie was the thing he loved the most in his life. It was just, to me, that's just what I gained from that. And losing Eddie, it took 2 years for it to happen, but in that 2 years, it was just like he just kept going lower and lower. He went down. He sunk so quick. He hit that.
I mean, I agree. Like I said, I just think it was. I don't think that helped.
No, it definitely did not help.
I don't think that was the. I don't feel like if. Again, it's really hard because, like, think about how many videos and how many podcasts and how many think pieces, and documentaries and books and things have been made of this Benoit thing.
Of course, I would just say this. We'll just say it like this. Well, at least I'll say it like this. I just feel that if Eddie was still around, I think that he would have held on. And if it was to happen, if something like that negative would have happened, I think it would have been more that Benoit would have been more. It would have been included other people. I'll just say that. In my opinion, if it was going to happen, I don't think that bond with Eddie was so strong that I think he felt like he had nothing. If Eddie was around, I think he would have felt something. And if he would have potentially gotten to a state where he can at least contend with life. Because he felt like the happiest when Eddie was around. Even though he was dealing with his struggles, he was still happy. And I know so many people, I know a couple people that, they deep down, they're not happy, but there's certain things in life that just keep them going and keep them feeling strong and everything.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if Eddie was around, he would have been that thing that would just kept people going no matter what, especially a Benoit. And I don't know. It's a hard subject. I understand. It's definitely a hard subject. I'm glad that you brought it up. I knew what you were going. I knew when I asked the question, I kind of knew where you were going to go with it, but I wasn't trying to set you up or anything. But it was just.
No, I mean, I realized when I was prepping for the show and I was writing down the qualifying matches, I looked at that name and I was like, oh, like I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't considered it because I guess in a way, because I mean, man, they don't really talk about him anymore. Sometimes I do forget that he
No,
does exist. Like,
yeah,
to be honest
I
with you, like
honestly, it's
I forgot.
promos, it's old promos on YouTube that remind me that like there's one that I always go to with The Rock,
Hmm.
when The Rock is trashing him and Kane. He's telling Benoit to go find Kane's private parts. I don't want to say the words up here, but like it's just hilarious. Like it's those things that that help me, that keep me remembering him. I don't want to, but like I remember the good things of Benoit. Let's just say that. I don't think we should erase the good things, but overall, I'm obviously 100% okay with just forgetting the man in general. But it's okay to just remember some of the good things that he
I
did.
mean, that's kind of to harken back to our last episode.
Right.
That's one of those where it's like, that's definitely hard to separate. Because for a couple years, I too thought, okay, well, I'm gonna choose to remember the wrestler and not the man that did that. But then it's like human nature. Like sometimes it's hard,
No,
you
it's
know.
definitely hard.
And
Definitely.
even like one of my favorite, I remember watching that match when it first happened, him and Angle at Rumble 2003. Like I loved that match, and now it's like, oh, like even when the network was still going on, you could when you watch, it would be like, oh, so and so versus so and so. But then when you watch the network and you would try to like scroll through and get to a match, they don't even say his name. It's like, oh, Kane is in a match. And then that's what that means. It's like it would be Kane versus Chris Benoit. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but that's what they would do. Like, oh, so and so has a match. And it's like, oh,
I never noticed
yeah.
that.
I remember trying to like, how would they do that? And it's like, or they would say if he was in a title match, oh, WWE Championship match. They wouldn't put his name there. And it's been so long, it's like you just kind of get used to it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that it's when you think of WrestleMania, I think one of the greatest matches of all time is the match Benoit was in.
Yeah, him and Triple H and Shawn
Triple
Michaels.
H and Shawn Michaels triple threat WrestleMania 20. Like that was a hell of a match. I watched it a few months ago, and
I haven't watched it in.
it's so great. It really is. It was so great. But it's like you said, like it's I didn't
hard.
even think about it. I was just watching wrestling,
Yep.
But it's hard to think about. I just think just harking back to going back to Eddie. I think Eddie just meant so much to so many people. I'll be honest with you, like I'm kind of holding back a couple tears, just talking about Eddie. And my voice kind of changed a little bit, at least in the way it sounds to me. Eddie he was just so special to so many people. I mean, we brought up, we just talked about Benoit, but you've mentioned Sasha, who to me is one of the greatest women of all time. I think she's the greatest, just women wrestler of all time for sure. In my eyes, her whole thing is Eddie. How many dedications has she put towards Eddie? I think it was. I know she did it at WrestleMania. She had a tribute to Eddie. I think she had one against Bayley in the famous Brooklyn match. Could be wrong, but I believe she did. I mean, her whole reason for watching wrestling was because of Eddie Guerrero.
Mm-hmm.
And if there wasn't an Eddie, we don't have a Sasha. That's damn.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that's true. I mean,
like damn. Like, imagine the impact he would have on her career if he was still alive. She's already so great now. And for those who don't watch WWE or they know Mercedes Moné, like but like damn, She probably wouldn't. You know what? Speaking of what if, she probably would never left WWE if Eddie was around.
I couldn't imagine. I wouldn't have. So
You know what I mean? Like, now, I mean, I think that she would. You know, I'm sure that the reason she left, part of the reason why she left Japan and left WWE for Japan. You know, Eddie performed in Japan. Eddie performed in Mexico and all these places. You know, I'm sure part of that is because of what he did over there.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't talk about this too much on the show, but like, once upon a time, it was your girl's dream to be a wrestler, and you know, I always said when I was younger, you know, everybody was like, "Oh, how are you gonna be a wrestler?" And it was like, I remember I used to read Eddie Guerrero's book cover to cover. Like, that's one of my favorite books, and I would just read all the things I could about him, and I would say, I'm gonna follow the path of the greats, and I wanted to go wherever he wanted, where he went, Mexico, Japan. Like, that's where I wanted to go, because it just felt like that was what made him who he was.
Right.
And that seemed like the perfect blueprint, you know? So I understand, you know, he was everything, you know? My first car that I got, Mom bought me a car. I named him Eddie. So everybody in my family, anytime they see a little gold Toyota Corolla, they call it an Eddie. So, I mean,
speaking of wrestling careers, I mean, during my, you know, stint in the Indies, you know, I had to move. I kind of like tribute to. I used to do the Eddie shimmy kind of thing. And one of my like signature moves, it was because of Eddie. Like, I loved Eddie, man. Like, I put Eddie in my top 3 favorites of all time. You know, that's with Rock. You know, Rock. Is Rock, Eddie. Yeah, I would just say top 2 because Eddie's probably my number 2. And then I would probably put like either Austin or Taker. But Eddie was just that. He was just so entertaining. Let's not even talk about like all the tributes that people have done for him, just based off the things that he used to do. You know, I think one of the funniest things of all time for me. Do you remember when Ricochet did the?
Yep, when he fainted.
He did the fainted thing. Like, this shit was so stupid, but it was hilarious and awesome. And we all knew what it was for, and it made it so much more. Like, those type of tributes, the way that Eddie would just do those things. I mean, his very last match that we ever got to see was against Mr. Kennedy, and he did it to win. And then, unfortunately, what happened? You know, like, it's just
that was kind of like his last one to us.
Yeah,
I felt like if he had gone out as a heel, I mean, of course we wouldn't want to lose him, but I always kind of felt like that last match, the way he left us, was like that was a way for him to leave us. It's like he cheated.
Yeah, like I remember when he faced the Hashams,
the Bashams, yeah,
and then Bashams. I'm sorry, Bashams, and he had and they had that girl, the dark chocolate girl. I don't know her name. Shaniqua.
Yeah,
and she had this whip. And I remember he grabbed the whip and he whipped the ref, and then threw the whip back at one of the Bachelor brothers. It was so hilarious. Like, it was, oh man,
yeah.
It was so, like, he's done this so many times, or he'll just throw the title at somebody, or he'll slap the chair down and just fall down and win. Like, it's just so many things, man. And we talk about so many great memories of Eddie Guerrero. I think we talked about it, or at least I think I mentioned it earlier. You know, obviously his win at No Way Out against Brock Lesnar, was, I think, probably one of the top greatest moments in professional wrestling history. Just the reaction, the way he did it. You know, he reversed the F5 into a DDT on top of the title. Then he went up, hit the frog splash. He motioned to the ref to get your ass over here, basically, and count the 3. And then the crowd goes crazy. He jumps into the crowd. I mean, it's just, oh man.
And to think, like, the Cow Palace, it was like standing room only. Like, a lot of the people that day in the arena, they were walk-ups to come see Eddie. So it's like he was definitely groundbreaking, and he shifted, I think, the wrestling industry. You know, one of our themes for the show, even in our old, podcast, was representation. I mean, we talk about like, your Damian Priest, your Zelina Vegas, your Carlitos, your Bad Bunny going to Puerto Rico. But I mean, think about Eddie, like I said earlier, like that representation, Latino community, it was Eddie. He was his, he said Viva La Raza, that's his people, the La Raza. It's like he carried them on his backs, and I mean, he was really one of those pioneers. Because again, you think about it, it's like, it was gimmicks and it was, tough guys. You didn't really have a lot of people who would talk about their culture a lot. But then here he comes, and it's like he has his culture. He's very proud of where he comes from. He carries it on his back, and he was one of those, I think, representation, pioneers. So he, like I said, he was definitely impactful in countless ways in the wrestling industry. So I mean, we talk about a lot of what ifs. You can't argue when stuff like that happens. When it's your time, it's your time. But it's like
he was taken way too early.
But gosh, it's just like it can't stick with you. Not even just the wrestling business. Like what the man would have done. See his daughters grow up, and like there's just so many like what ifs.
His daughter is in the business. She's in WWE, right?
She was.
Okay.
She was. To see his daughter get married, to be there, to so many things.
Yeah.
So, we don't want to end this on a downer, you guys, but I've had so much fun talking about what if, because, it's been almost 20 years since we lost him, and I think stuff like this to kind of remind you, like, what he did and what he could have done,
You're right. I don't want to end on a down, so let's end on a positive note. And I think this is probably the best way to do it. The show is a what if show, but obviously the unfortunate did happen. So let's end it with talking about what became of it, the great things that happened because of it. I mean, obviously it's a negative, but sometimes there's positives out of the negatives, and we've mentioned a lot of them, a lot of the positives that came from. We've mentioned Sasha, we've mentioned the Rey Mysterios, of course, but I mean, let's talk about some other things. I think that one thing that we've mentioned, but I think that it's obviously helping someone significantly at this moment. Dominic Mysterio. He is basically using, and when I say using, not in a negative way, but he's honoring, I guess is the best way. He's honoring Eddie Guerrero with his gimmick now. He has the hair of Eddie.
Mullet game strong on that one.
Like he got the hair, he's got the look. The heel persona is Eddie-esque. He has his mommy, like Eddie had his mommy in China. He has his mommy in Rhea. Like we're seeing, and this is, I don't want people to be like, oh, mad because I'm about to say this, but I mean, are we potentially seeing a future Eddie Guerrero in Dominic Mysterio? And I don't mean, obviously he may not reach that greatness, but just Eddie-esque. Like this is kind of like a Eddie 2.0 in a way in what Dominic is doing.
He got some Eddie-isms. Like he got,
yeah, but
like I said, mullet game strong, but
he's turning it into his own. In a way,
I always like hesitate when people are like the next.
Okay, I'm not. Okay, you're right. I'm not gonna say the next, but I mean, what the man is doing he is arguably the number one heel in the world right now. Is he not?
Well, I agree. Genuine heel, yeah.
You know, like it's he learned that from somebody.
That's his daddy's son. So
This is, and that's his daddy's son, whether we want to believe it or not, his storyline or not, but it's just that, like, we're seeing the future. We obviously mentioned Sasha Banks, aka Mercedes Moné, and her career based off of Eddie, but the career what Dominic is doing right now, he's only, I don't know his age, he's got to be like 25, 26 right now, maybe even a little bit younger. He's in that range. What his career can be, it's absolutely phenomenal, and I cannot wait for his future. Obviously, his present is, he's facing the number one face in the WWE right now at the next pay-per-view, or I'm sorry, PLE, Money in the Bank in London. He's facing Cody Rhodes. You know how big of an achievement that is alone?
I can imagine.
Like, you're already facing the number one face, and you're so young. It's a crowning achievement. Win, loss doesn't matter. The fact that they trust you enough to put you in that match, that's saying something to me. And I attribute a lot of that to Eddie. Obviously, Rey Mysterio gets credit too. I'm not taking away any credit from him, but I'm just saying, like, Eddie obviously had a very impactful, a very big impact on the career of Dominic and his future. To try to copy that in a way and make it your own. It's major props to what Eddie did in his career, and obviously to what Dominic's gonna do. I love that, and I just love the fact that cruiserweights in the last 10 years have gone to have dominant roles in the world of professional wrestling. It's think of the Kenny Omegas. Kenny was not the level he was. He was a young, small guy. Adam Cole, small guy. Will Ospreay, small guy. Ricochet, small guy. All these guys. Daniel Bryan, small guy. Seth Rollins, small guy. And it's seeing that potential in these small guys that Eddie, was himself a small guy. And he became, he left WCW because he wasn't, happy with the way he was being used over there. Went to WWE, became a household name, and boom, the legend is born. I attribute a lot of that to Eddie Guerrero.
Yep.
And Eddie, I love you. Thank you. I wish, yeah, that was a very bad day, but at the end, at this moment, I only can think of the positives of it.
He left us a lot of memories, that's for sure.
Left us with so many great memories. There's nothing more else to say about Eddie Guerrero. It's both of our favorites. We lie, we cheat, we steal, all because of Eddie. And Viva La Raza, we got LWO going because of Eddie. Like, there's just so many things.
Yep.
Anything you want to add to that, Sasha?
No. I think he's the GOAT. We'll leave it at that. Greatest of all time.
Well, Sasha, what are your what would you say your opinion on our What If series to start off? Because I think we had I think starting with Eddie was a perfect choice to start. And I want to hear your opinions, and then maybe we can tell the people what some other ideas we may have. They may change, they may not, we don't know, but go ahead and just let the people know.
Okay. Like I said, I was thinking about this all week leading up to us recording this. I was like, I just want this to come off respectful. Like, it's always a weird thing to talk about if somebody is no longer with us, what would happen? Because, it could go left in a minute. But I think we kept it respectful. I think we, just looking and talking, there were so many things I didn't, there's things that you said, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, So I think it was good. As far as things to come, I mean, we've been kind of spitballing ideas. If, the listeners have any ideas of things that they kind of want us to talk about, we're definitely open to that on our social media page, Ring Champs JFS. You can hit us up on, Twitter, just message us and just give us any suggestions. But I mean, stuff we talked about was like, what if WCW won the Monday Night Wars and there was no WWE? Would they have been able to sustain themselves considering that they folded a couple years after the Monday Night Wars ended? Like, where would that have left the wrestling if WWE had lost and WCW wasn't strong enough to hold up on its own? Or maybe they would have. Who knows? Things like, what if The Rock? The Rock was obviously Hulk Hogan had done movies before in the 80s and things like that, but The Rock was like the first true mainstream crossover for the wrestling actor. But what if his acting career wasn't as successful? Where does that leave other people who have crossed over, into acting? I feel like especially in wrestling, it's hard. It was for a time hard for them to cross over and be taken as serious actors, outside of like bit roles and TV shows like that. What if The Rock hadn't succeeded? Where would that leave other people who have crossed over? We see a lot of, we have Forbidden Door coming up in a few hours. What if WWE had kind of worked with other companies like that? What matchups, what things could have happened, what we could have seen if those crossovers had happened in WWE. And another one we talked about was, Triple H. Vince McMahon is lurking in the background, but it's essentially Triple H's head honcho. What if he hadn't married Stephanie? And we could go both ways. What if he hadn't married her in real life? What if he hadn't married her on screen? Because that one came first.
That's a scary thought. Oh my God.
Where would we be now? So those are the kind of things that, we want to touch on coming up. Like I said, we're going to have our regular formatted episodes, but, we definitely wanted to just explore new ways to, just talk about wrestling. So like I said, we have those coming up. If you guys have any suggestions, we are open and willing to hear about them. And who knows, maybe your suggestion will make it as an episode on our show.
I definitely hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys give us some ideas, maybe, obviously ones that we haven't thought of, because there's so many what ifs in the world of professional wrestling that we can talk about, and I would love to talk about them. I love these type of topics because it's not, the one thing about Ring Champs, and that's different from the Daddy Fino show. In the Daddy Fino show, I felt like we were more of a, kind of like a recap type thing. Where now I feel like Ring Champs is going to be more open to topics that not other shows really talk about. Like, they may once in a while do it, but I feel like here at Ring Champs, we're going to talk about topics that are not going to be explored as much. And I am so hyped for the potential of topics that we have for you guys and for me and Sasha to talk about, because Sasha is obviously very knowledgeable in the sport of professional wrestling. I think I am, but I know she is, and it's just that combination of us it's just really great, and it's so special. So please hit us up with any ideas you guys have with what is, or just topics in general. It doesn't even just have to be what is, just topics in general you guys would love to hear us talk about. We'll definitely dive into all those ideas, because we're always on the lookout for stuff, for sure. But another great episode of the Ring Champs, in my opinion. Thank you, Sasha, for all the contributions you had for the show. Great idea leading up to this. Um, gotta give you all the props for that, because in Ring Champs, that's just what we do. We give the props.
I appreciate to you too, Cap.
We love, we love doing this, every week, and we're gonna just continue to keep going and keep growing. So thank you for all the listeners that we had. I sent you a screenshot the other day of the number of listeners that we had.
We're growing.
We're growing. So thank you for everyone that's listening. Hopefully we're getting some more. Make sure you share and subscribe and follow all of our sites. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. So definitely share that link with us, with all the people out there, all your friends and stuff. We definitely appreciate that.
Leave us a review too. Give us some 5-star ratings. Do all that.
Yeah,
Subscribe.
5-star ratings, all that. Yeah, of course. I hope everybody is going to be tuning into AEW tomorrow. They got a fantastic show with New Japan, Forbidden Door. I'm going to be tuning in. I might even go live with it. I'm going to be watching it with my boy Brandon. Shout out to my boy Brandon. We're going to be watching that live. So I might even stream that. I don't even know. I might stream like a watch party type thing. I don't know. I know I'll definitely be drinking and watching it, so it's gonna be crazy reactions.
If you're gonna be drinking, maybe that's not a good idea.
We're gonna have a party. This is Forbidden Door. You know what I mean? AE-Dub. You know what I mean?
We need to better call Saul.
We're just gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun watching some. In my opinion, the dream match, Daniel Bryan versus Okada. That's a match that I've always wanted to see, so that's gonna be great. Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega 2. That's gonna be great. Like, it's just a host of. I just know it's gonna be great wrestling. So Forbidden Door, if you haven't purchased it or anything, please go out there and watch it. For sure, go buy the AEW video game that's coming out, Fight Forever. It's looking good. It's an old school arcade-ish type thing. If you like all the old SmackDown games and stuff like that, it's kind of has those vibes. So definitely go check them out and buy that. Pre-order is 10% off right now, so definitely go do that. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate everything. Thank you, Sasha. And at the end of the day, thank you, Eddie. I know we were supposed to be saying thank you, Trish, but we got to say thank you, Eddie, for this episode. We love you. We love everything you've done for the business. And we miss you. At the end of the day, we just miss you. And that's why we did this episode, because, Eddie, we miss you. And that's all I have to say about that. Any last words from you, Sasha?
No, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate you.
We out of here. This is episode 4, Ring Champs. We out of here. Peace.
Adios.
Viva La Raza.